everybody. I'm Namita Thapar, Executive Director of MCure Pharmaceuticals, and today we're going to be talking about infertility. A recent survey done in 6 metros demonstrated that the incidence of infertility in the age group of 30 to 40 is as high as 48%. When Doc and I were discussing the causes of male and female infertility, it's about 50-50% each, which not a lot of people know about. And infertility, even today, has stigmas, has taboos around it. People don't want to talk openly that they've gone through an IVF or an ICSI. And for that, we have Dr. Jatin Shah, and we have 2 lovely guests, Anita, who's going to talk about her journey, and Supriya. Let's start with you, Doc. Yep. I wanted to begin with just understanding that at what point should a couple realize that, we've tried long enough and it's time to go and get professional help?
Yeah, so a lot of this depends, of course, on the woman's age, because the woman has a pelvic clock, which starts ticking the minute she has the first menstruation at 11, and the egg reserve keeps dwindling with age and time. So usually we say that if a woman is under the age of 35, and if the couple has been having a regular life for say and been trying for a year and still not able to conceive, they should seek medical help. If not directly to an IVF specialist, at least to the local gynecologist. And if she is above the age of 35, then maybe 6 months of trying time should be enough before at least doing some basic tests. And by basic tests we mean, of course, now the days are that we first look at the man. So we first ask for a simple semen analysis for the male partner, and if that is normal, then we begin investigations for the female partner.
Okay. I'm glad that you start with the man, because very often, at least a few years back, it was always the woman who would get tested first. Yeah. So when we were speaking, you said that's changed now, and most doctors will ask the men to be tested as much as the women. So that's a big shift, you would say, right?
Yes, very big shift.
Excellent. What are the common causes of infertility?
So from the female partner point of view, what we are really seeing a kind of epidemic is reduced ovarian reserve. So that's what I was talking about before also, because probably, it's a known fact that by the age of 30, a woman has lost 88% of her eggs.
That high?
So only 12% are left from 30 onwards.
Wow.
And every woman is born with a different reserve of eggs, and that is why the age of menopause differs from woman to woman.
Right.
So depending on what kind of reserve they have. So we are seeing more and more young girls with a diminished and a reduced ovarian reserve, which is really becoming alarming. Second, of course, we have very commonly is polycystic ovaries. PCOS, almost 20% of patients have polycystic ovary. Okay. And endometriosis, which is, of course, more common in some southern states of India, but is generally everywhere, and that's another 15 to 20% of patients. 20% of patients have unexplained infertility, means all the tests come back normal, but for some reason they are not able to conceive. And of course 50-60% is the male partner, where you may see low sperm counts, low sperm motility, too many abnormal sperms, maybe some erectile dysfunction, inability to have a normal sexual life, and so on. And there are a lot of other causes for them too. Also about 10 or 15% may have azoospermia, that means they are absolutely zero sperm counts.
What are the causes of male infertility? Like women, you said it could be PCOS, ovarian reserve, endometriosis, but men having a low sperm count, what are the causes?
So it's very easy to just blame lifestyle, but lifestyle may be responsible for say about 10 to 20% of these cases. A lot of them have some childhood history, maybe trauma to the testicles or a cricket ball injury, or things like a varicocele where the veins around the testicles are enlarged, so there's too much of heat generation near the testicles, which might be affecting the sperm counts and motility. So there are a lot of reasons in the male, but generally it's very difficult to trace back and really find out the reason unless they have something grossly hormonal, like say a primary testicular failure where the testes are just not functioning and not producing any sperms, right, or something like that.
Got it. And then we hear about these terms IUI, IVF, ICSI. So what is the difference between these terms, and what is the success rate for people out there who are too afraid to go in for infertility?
So fortunately, over the past, I have been practicing for 3 decades, we've seen a gradual increase in the success rate of most of the procedures. Now the simplest procedures, so suppose we have a modern day corporate couple where both are busy in their careers, high flying, catching a flight every day and no time for each other. So this is becoming very common. So there we advise something like an IUI, because it's very likely they are missing the correct dates because they just don't have the time to be together, maybe meet once or twice a month, and that's how it's become. So for them what we advise is an IUI. So what we do is we can freeze the husband's sperm Then we just monitor the female ovulation, and the day she ovulates, we take the sperm, wash it, and put it directly into the uterine cavity. So that is intrauterine insemination. Of course, that is one modern day indication, but there are a lot of other indications also, like an unconsummated marriage, not able to have proper sexual intercourse, or there is borderline low sperm counts or motility, which I can improve with a good semen wash in the laboratory. All these cases would benefit with IUI, but the success rate at best is about 15%, 1/5 per cycle attempted. So everything we do in our field is over cycles. So it's never a sure shot that okay, first shot you're going to get pregnant. So we'll tell them 15% is the chance with IUI, maybe you should try it twice, and if it doesn't work, then move on to the next step. Now IVF conventional, what started 43 years ago, was very simply put taking the eggs out. So we give some injections, hormone injections to the female partner, so that she produces more eggs. Instead of one, she has 8, 10, 12 eggs, and then we pick them up with a minor procedure done transvaginally under a short anesthesia, fertilize them with the husband's sperm, make the embryos in the lab. So the entire artificial environment is created in vitro in a laboratory just like the human body, so that we can make those embryos and then replace them back into the female uterus. Success rates when I started in my first year 30 years ago, I did 9 cases and only the 9th one got pregnant. So it was quite
One in
dismally
9.
low. Yeah, but today most very good centers would have success rates at least minimally at 50% per cycle.
Wow, so they've gone from under 10% to 50%.
Yeah, 50 would almost be out in the first cycle, and if you say we have a young patient under 35, no major complicating issues, you can even expect 60% per cycle. So IVF has definitely become much more successful than it was in the past. Now when IVF came, we were still not able to counter the male part.
Correct.
You know, because a lot of them with IVF, if the sperms are not good, would have failed fertilization.
Correct.
So the eggs would just not fertilize. So about 20 years ago, we had a new technique called ICSI, wherein, you know, normally sperm counts are 20 million per ml. But finally, you need only one sperm to produce one embryo. So if somehow we can pick up one sperm in a needle and inject it into the egg and make the embryo, then we can help any kind of male infertility. So that technique is called ICSI, ICS. So we actually just pick up one sperm and inject into the egg.
And what is the success rate of ICSI?
It's the same as IVF. It's actually an IVF related procedure. So same around 50% in general, and if it's a very young patient, you can expect 60%.
So 60 or 50% is in the first attempt?
Per attempt, yeah.
Per attempt.
So if 10 couples come to me and do IVF once, we expect 5 or 6 to be out in the first round. The remaining 4 or 5 who fail will do a second round. Again 50% will conceive. So again 2 or 3 will be out in the second round. In the last 2, one may conceive in the third or the fourth cycle, and the 10th patient may need a third party support.
Understood. And that's a great segue to my next question. That, you know, when you talk about third party support, you're talking about surrogacy, you're talking about egg donation, sperm donation, embryo donation, which is becoming increasingly common these days. And of course, things like surrogacy have a bit of controversy around it as well. Can you speak more on that?
Yeah, so you know, there are a lot of men now say they have testicular failure. So even if we do a testicular biopsy or an aspiration, and sometimes we don't find sperm, or if he has absolutely very small testicles, or maybe they can't afford the ICSI procedures because all these processes are expensive, then those cases would resort to a sperm bank. So which was glorified by, you know, the movie Vicky Donor. So that actually exists in all IVF
but that
centers.
helped, right?
Yeah, it helps. So that's how we have a semen bank, and all the profiling is done, health history, medical history, family history, then whatever the couple desires in terms of, you know, height, complexion, color of hair, color of eyes, blood group, everything can be matched for them. So that is how they can avail of a sperm donation. Then there are a lot of women who come to us with premature menopause. Means you may have even a 26-year-old who's never had a menstruation in her life. So there are a lot of women who are born without eggs, premature ovarian failure. So they need to resort to an egg donation. Then there are a lot of young couples where bad eggs is the reason for the infertility. So when we do an IVF and they fail, we find out that the egg quality is not good. So then we recommend oocyte donation or egg donation to them for conceiving. Some couples, both partners have a problem. Like I told you, 20% it's both male and female combined.
Correct.
So if the man is also azoospermic with a 0 sperm count, and the female also is menopausal, then they still could opt for embryo donation. You know, which is you take a donor egg and a donor sperm, make a donor embryo and transfer it to them.
And surrogacy? Yeah,
so surrogacy is of course a very important tool in the armamentarium of any IVF specialist, because there are a lot of women who are born without a uterus. In fact, I had a gynecologist patient. She herself is a gynecologist and was born without a uterus. Now, what do these women do, right? They need a surrogate mother. Then tuberculosis is very common in many parts of India, and tuberculosis completely damages the uterus lining. So a lot of these patients also need surrogacy. Then there are women who say in the first delivery they lose the child for some reason, and then there is heavy bleeding and the uterus also needs to be removed to save her life. How will she have her next child, right? So all these are genuine indications for surrogacy.
Okay, fantastic. And is surrogacy something that is easily possible in India, and
Yeah.
without its taboos associated, and the laws are conducive?
No, the guidelines are very clear, ICMR guidelines. So most good clinics will follow the ethical practices of the guidelines. The bill has been in the in the process for a long time. It passed through Lok Sabha. It's also gone through a lot of, I think, executive parliamentary committee was set up, and now they have given their final recommendations. But I think first we'll need to have the ART bill in place before the surrogacy bill finally comes.
Right.
But if done properly and ethically, it's a fantastic tool. And all we need is good regulation. Any practice you have, banning never really helps, because it will just push the whole thing into the black market, or couples will start going abroad because there are other countries still offering it.
Right.
So instead of that, if we could regulate it properly, have proper licensing and strict SOPs that this is to be followed for a surrogacy case, I think it's the best
That's
thing which
always
can
a better
happen.
option. Fantastic.
Because the government did propose altruistic surrogacy, it means only a blood relative, like a real
Yes.
sister. But in today's times, how
It's
many?
not easy to
it's
do
not
that.
practical, and how many sisters would be ready to give up, say, 10 months, 1 year of their lives,
Right.
and then their families have to agree. So it's as
Not
good
very
as just banning the
practical.
procedure.
Yeah,
Then
true.
nobody's going to
Not
do
very
it.
practical either.
So I think there'll be a rethink on that, and we are hopeful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Very important question. The statistic that shocked me is that by the time you're 30, you said you lose 88% of your egg reserve.
Yeah.
And now more and more women are working women. They're delaying their pregnancy. And so something like egg freezing is becoming very common. Can you talk a bit more about it?
Yeah, so that's what we call social egg freezing for
Right.
women who are very sure that, okay, I'm not going to settle down till 40, or I have not yet found the right partner, or whatever the reasons may be. So social egg freezing is very, very popular. It all started in the US. About 5 or 6 years ago, I used to have maybe one a month
Right.
egg freezing, and now we have almost 5 to 10 a month.
Okay.
So there's a lot of awareness now, and most women would opt to do it, because the highly educated women also understand genetics,
Right.
and they want their own genes in the baby, right? So this is how it's going to happen. So
If you remember, Doctor, I had come to you for egg
yes,
freezing.
I was about to. It just struck my mind just now.
Yeah,
Yes,
the
she had
reason
come-
for me to visit him for
Yeah.
egg freezing, I was 38 at that time.
Exactly. So-
And he checked me and he told me, you only have 2 years in hand. And that time I was setting up my business. So then I went back to him after 1.5 years and I said, no, I'm not finding a partner. So I'm now all set to become a single mother. And that's how my treatment started. And
So she's the classic example. So this is what happened initially.
Right.
All the initial patients who started coming to me for egg freezing were 38, 40, 42, 43, Then
Right.
it's a bit late, because the egg
Right.
reserve is already down, and you're unlikely to get that many eggs, because you need at least 10 eggs if you want to say 50% chance of pregnancy, and so on. Of course, it varies with each age, but in general. So now we always used to recommend that egg freezing is best done in the late 20s or early 30s. So now the trend is changing. Now I'm having women at 28, 30, 32.
I think there's more awareness as well.
So now they're coming very young.
And now we would like to hear from our two amazing guests. But before that, since this show is all about breaking taboos and destigmatizing health conditions, I'd like to share a personal story. So when I conceived the very first time, within 2 months I was pregnant. It was an effortless pregnancy and delivery. But the second time when I tried to conceive, for 2 years, I was unsuccessful, and I went through 2 IVF cycles, both failed. So I know the incredible mental and physical trauma that a woman goes through. And just remember, this is after I already had a child. So imagine those women where they don't have a kid and they're going through this level of mental and physical trauma. It's debilitating. In my case, I gave up after 2 failed attempts, and miraculously after 4 or 5 months I conceived naturally. But however, it's important that we speak up about this issue, we talk about it, and women who've gone through it support other women who are going through it, to show them that whether it is conceiving naturally or adoption, there is a light at the end of the tunnel and the beautiful journey of being a mother. And now with that, let's hear from Anita, who has a lovely story, a very inspiring story to share with all of us.
Thank you so much actually for this opportunity to talk about it. And I'm very happy about the conversation that we are having with you, because you have actually spoken about so many things that are never spoken about in non-medical circles. In the sense, like you said, there is a support group that is needed. I would have loved to know that there are that half the female population is going through exactly the same thing that I am. I didn't know. I felt like I was the one person because my mother, I think, had me exactly 10 months after she got married. My aunt was pregnant just like her 2 months into her marriage. So I'm like, everybody is so fertile, and here I am. It's been so many years. My husband and I love to travel. So for the first 4 or 5 years of our marriage, we didn't even realize that I wasn't pregnant. We're having a good time in every sense of the word, and how come I'm not pregnant? And that is when I was, I think, about 31, 32, when I started actually trying to figure out why I wasn't getting pregnant. I had 2 failed cycles of IUI and 1 failed IVF in London. About a year after that, I adopted a child. Honestly, I had already filed for adoption without anyone knowing before I left for my IVF. And the most wonderful thing was when it failed, I called up my mother-in-law and she said, Anita, why are you putting yourself through all this? Just adopt a child if that is what you want. So there was no taboo. People would have questioned the child, like you must have looked at a lot of ads, etc. about adoption today. It's all like Ma kaun thi, and who's the mother of this child and why was this child? The question is always about the child and the background of the child. That stopped me from talking about it. My daughter is you've met her, she's such a wonderful child. I don't think my husband and I would have produced anything like that. Right. She's amazing.
And she's so much like you.
She's exactly
in every
like
way,
me.
right?
Yeah, and very outspoken. And she was like, why is there so much drama around adoption? And IVF and infertility. Right. These are all things that happen.
You told her when she was 8.
She was 8. Right? I started talking to her about this when she was 8. Of course, everybody was very worried about what I was doing. But I thought she should know from me, and I didn't want her to hear it from anybody else. Yeah. So while I'm sure that IVF works for so many wonderful women and there are so many wonderful children born out of it, like everything else, I think it's a choice that a woman has to finally make because it's her body. Yeah. It's the hormones being put into her body. It is a choice that she has to make finally. Yes. And also the hormones, I'm sure work on you. Right? So there is depression, there is anxiety, swings, there is stress. For 2 months I sat with my legs crossed after the IVF. I thought if I sat like this,
it would
fall out.
It's unbelievable. In London, in the cold.
Once a woman walks in normally, after I do the embryo transfer, which takes half a minute, they actually start walking.
Yes.
Oh my God.
And I have to tell them, please be normal.
It doesn't make any difference, right?
It doesn't make any difference. So for 2 months I was sitting like
imagine the stress they have.
I know.
For a woman who is not getting pregnant, adoption is also an option. Yes. You need to encourage them. It may not be for everybody. IVF. I could not have gone through a second cycle. So coming from you, as somebody who actually does IVF, telling me, Anita, don't worry. This is not the end of the world. Why don't you try adoption? And then my husband hearing that, the family hearing that will make a huge difference. So giving the patient options is very important.
And now, Supriya, we'd love to hear your story because Doc told me about you and it's as inspiring. So please tell us.
Yeah, I must say it starts from my age of 38 when I visited doctor for the first time to freeze my eggs. And doctor told me you only have 2 years in hand. And as any other girl, I was also looking for a partner, which I wasn't finding. And then, say after 1.5 years, I told my mom, I'm not finding anyone. Then how about the motherhood? Because I have always wanted to be a mother.
Right.
And my mom fully supported. And I started my treatment at the age of 40. And it was kind of a roller coaster ride emotionally. But in doctor's clinic, there was full support. I had 3 failed cycles.
You had 3 failed cycles?
Yes, I had 3 failed cycles. Wow. And there was a time when my confidence was shaken. And when doctor sensed it, and he put in so much of positivity in me.
That's so
and I
wonderful,
went with the 200% positivity, and my 4th cycle was a success. And today I have I had twin sons who are 5.5-year-old. And I'm so happy.
And I believe you're a single mom, right?
I'm a single mom.
How has that experience been?
Amazing. Amazing. There is nobody to interfere.
With the guy, right?
Yes.
Nobody to interfere.
Exactly. I love that.
Doctor gives my number to his patients who visits him.
Yes, he's become a counselor now.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So anybody who's down and depressed. So that's our kind of group. So I give numbers of patients who are ready to talk. Because you have to cry with them, you have to smile with them, you have to laugh with them, and then enjoy the happy ending also.
Right.
So it's a roller coaster ride. This whole IVF journey is full of emotions.
So on this very positive note, infertility is a topic which I thought would be very difficult to talk about. But we just had such a lovely doctor, positive doctor. And then we had two women who pretty much smashed every myth and taboo that can exist and was so vocal and candid about their stories. That it's been a very positive episode. It's inspired hope. It's inspired, the fact that it's okay to talk about these things.
Yes.
And just like we've made progress over the last 10 years, we will do more over the next 10 years. So on this very happy note, I'd like to end the episode and thank our two women with this small little gift that we have for them.
ढूंढने है वो निकली तकदीर अपनी उजली इल्ली ने मन में ठाना है बन के उड़ना है तितली दायरे लाग के ही तो जीना आया मुझको मैं बदली